Welcome to the Performance Enhancing Podcast. It's like steroids for your brain. A podcast for people that want the best info, but just don't have the time. Get your podcast fix with the Cliff Notes versions of your favorite podcasts. No fluff, just the actionable golden nuggets. Having this much knowledge at your fingertips should be downright illegal. So get ready for another dose of Performance Enhancing Podcast with Satori Prime. Here's your host, Ilan Ferdman.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Performance Enhancing Podcast with your host, Ilan Ferdman. So if you haven't signed up to our PEP list, which we basically send you a recap email once a week about this week's shows, make sure you head over to performancepodcasts.com. That's podcasts with an S at the end. And when you do that, you can even pick up 6 hours of subliminal training. That means that using this training, you can go to work on things like speed reading, memory, and even how to be more decisive through subliminal messaging. You just turn it on and you listen to it. So make sure you go ahead and grab that. Also, if you haven't yet subscribed to our show and you listen to it via iTunes or Stitcher, we've made it really easy for you to do that. Again, you can go over to performancepodcasts.com/iTunes if you prefer to use iTunes. And if you prefer Stitcher, again, performancepodcasts.com/Stitcher. And remember, we have new episodes coming out every Monday and Thursday morning, so make sure you check those out. Lastly, I just want to let you know of a couple of things. If you want to keep up with everything that we do here at Satori Prime, you can always just head over to our main site. It's satoriprime.com and roam around. We have a ton of free content and we constantly update it. And if you're looking specifically for some mentorship, maybe around your marketing efforts, or specifically on how to use Facebook paid marketing to, let's say, double, triple, or even quadruple your business, then we have a couple of masterminds we run that can absolutely transform your marketing efforts in less than 90 days. So all you have to do if you want to check that out is head over to satoriprime.com/mastermind. All right. So now let's talk about today's show.
Well, everyone. I hope you're ready for part 2 with Brian Smith. If you missed part 1, make sure to go check that out. But again, Brian Smith is the inventor, the creator of UGG boots, the sensation that's taken over the world. And in part 2, we're going to start right with one of the most raw, real stories about business and what it means to literally pick yourself up off the ground and keep the dream alive and keep company going, as well as some incredible insights that Brian's going to share with us. So without further ado, enjoy part 2 of my interview with Brian Smith, the creator of UGG. All right, so we spoke about a little bit about infancy stage. Then what comes after infancy?
Usually it's the toddling and then youth.
Okay. So are there any situations in any of those stages where you were like wanting to quit, the world seemed upside down, you had a massive breakthrough?
Yeah, there's another really good one. We've sort of got through the toddling stage and the youth. We've got a pretty good business going, and now we're about, for $6 million.
And how long ago this on the timeline?
By this time we were about 8 years into, maybe 10 years into it.
Okay.
8 years. And remember how I kept buying out investors, right? Well, the 3 guys that came on, Neil bought the other 2 out. So it was him 75%, and I'd finished the lawsuit. So he invited me to come in. And just before we did all the paperwork, he was at a motocross race, racing his bike, and had a massive heart attack.
Holy moly.
And didn't survive. So I called up his widow the next, that afternoon, and I said, look, I'll be up in the morning. We'll try and figure out where it's at. And now keep in mind, I'd been on the road for 3 years, nearly 4 years, and didn't have any idea how it was going. But I thought we were doing fantastic because just before Neil died, we bought new cars for each other and we signed life insurance policies on each other, and I thought the company was doing great. So, but when I got in there, I realized, oh my God, the computer hadn't been brought online properly, so it didn't tie to inventory or receivables, and I found drawers of checks, $35,000 worth of checks that hadn't been banked, from all the COD business, And my biggest worry was that I had to make sure our supplier was taken care of because he was going to be our lifeline for the next season. By now, the product is just selling like crazy. It's, I've got into the surf market, the ski market, back east, I'm in the hockey market. And so sales were really fantastic. And I knew that we were going to do probably 6 to 8 million the next year, and I needed to get product. So I sent all the money I could to Australia to make sure that was all tied up. And then as the orders were coming in, we had the best and the worst thing going. The best was that the sales reps on the road were sending in orders like in record numbers. The worst thing was I was sending the orders down to Australia, and it was getting a really lukewarm feedback because he didn't know if I was going to survive.
Wow.
And I was sort of getting this inkling just through the tone of voice that, maybe, we just started with brand new black and charcoal colors, and I was sending all these orders down, and he's going, well, I'm not sure I can get black skins, or I can't find charcoal, and this went on to April, May, June, and by June I was starting to get really worried because I knew he wasn't in production for me, and I knew we had to supply the market in September. So I decided to go down and visit one of the big tanneries on the east coast of Australia just as a backup. And this guy supplied, excuse me, the owner of the tannery supplied skins to all the manufacturers, several manufacturers down there. And, he was really keen one day and then sort of scared the next day and really keen the next day and on and off. And he had a plaque on his desk that says, I reserve the right to change my mind, and he did it every day, And so I ended up coming back home. This was in like late August, and I didn't have another deal. I didn't have another supplier. And one of my sales reps in California called in and said, hey, Brian, there's this company out there called Thunderwear, and they're selling sheepskin boots, and they claim they're going to put UGG out of business.
Wow.
And I went online and looked up their company, actually through the trade magazines, and they were a windsurfing company, and I couldn't figure out why they'd be doing boots. But anyway, I put it out of my mind because I had bigger problems. And then September rolls around, and we got a big trade show in Long Beach. And so we went up and set up the trade show. And when we finished setting up, I thought I'll go across and check out this Thunderwear booth. And there was all of our black and all of our charcoal and all of the best product from my line was all sitting there on their table. And I realized that my supplier has done an end run around me. And
wow.
That was like, then we had to go through this 3 days of trade show, and it was a record. We wrote $250,000 worth of business, and I didn't have a clue.
Wow.
Now that I'd seen where all my product was going, I knew that lifeline was cut, and so I didn't have a clue how I was going to get product. So I, after the show, I drove back to San Diego, and that night I talked to my wife, and I figured there's no way we're going to be able to pull this out. We're going to have to shut down. And I called up Gordon, the guy who owned the tannery in Australia, and said, Gordon, thanks for all the time you spent with me, but this is what George has done, and there's no way I'm going to be able to survive. So I'm just going to call everybody tomorrow and tell them that they can't get their product. They better go buy the other stuff.
Wow.
And I remember, my wife was sitting on the couch and I was lying on my back on the floor. We were just watching a bit of TV, and the show finished, and we turned the TV off, and I rolled over on my stomach and got up on my hands and knees and started crawling towards the bedroom, And my wife, she's a really quiet person, she just boomed at me, Brian, you get up now and walk to bed like a man. And oh man, I got up, and it was like, Atlas shrugged, that Atlas had the world on his shoulders. I just stood up, and it was like this whole load fell off my back, and I realized, God, I'm healthy, I've got a great wife, and there's more to life than this business, I've just got to figure out. And suddenly I went to bed that night, and I went straight to sleep for the first time in probably, maybe 6 months,
Wow.
And about 3 o'clock in the morning, the phone rang, and it was Gordon from Australia, and he just says, Brian, you've really touched me. Screw that George Bircher. I'll get you all the product you need. And like, instantly we're back in business, and without even a contract or anything, we just sent all the patents down, and he got them out to all the manufacturers, and within a month we had 4,000 or 5,000 pairs a month rolling in, and we were able to satisfy our major customers. We never had enough product. We could have sold $2 or $3 million more that year, but at least the retailers had UGG labels on the product, and we survived it. So
wow,
that was one of those, could have given up, almost tried to give up, but the universe just has a way of working, man. When my focus was so strong, the universe just played into it.
It's brilliant. I mean, two things I just want to point out to people. One, I've noticed, and maybe you've noticed this too, I'm sure, that life lessons come no matter what. And you have an opportunity. You can either learn them when they're little, kittens that are playful and, you have the eyes to see them, or at some point it's going to be like a lion jumping out of the jungle to try to maul you. But in any event, you're going to learn them. And what I've noticed is the bigger your business gets, the lessons are still there. They just become bigger and more expensive.
That's a perfect way of saying it. Yeah.
It's interesting though. I feel like even though that happens, your business IQ, let's call it, and your mindset allows you to interact with the big things that happen at a much higher level than when you first started. Like the littlest thing could set you off and you'd be like, oh, I'm done. And now you're dealing with something like this and you still figure out a way to get through it. I think that's really powerful.
Yeah. There's always a way. It's like enthuse over apparent defeat. You're never defeated until, I was so close. I could say I actually gave up that night. Wow. But the universe wasn't done with me.
Well, isn't it amazing what our women can do, right?
Yeah. And they have such great insight. Yeah.
The funny part is it was one line. If your best buddy had told you that over a beer, you've been like, F you, I'm going to sulk. But your wife has an ability to just say things and you're like, the other thing that I think is really amazing, just from and I know you're kind of into this whole energy and universe and all that stuff, is I tell people you can't have two things occupy the same space at the same time. It's impossible. In the physical world, it's impossible. And I feel like, when you were talking about that Atlas Shrugged moment, everything was there. So you have a container, and in the container was just worry and concern and shutting down the business, and all of these things are in that container. And your wife in that moment literally had you empty that space. And I feel like because of that, this guy, was his name George that you said? No, the other guy.
Gordon, yeah.
Gordon. It's almost like you clear up the space and then now Gordon can just come in and it works.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. Yeah.
There's something really powerful for everyone listening just about letting go. And if you, it's that famous line, what you resist persists, but by resisting it, you're keeping that thing in place.
Yeah.
And what Brian, you did was, and granted it comes in moments where it almost feels like life or death.
Yeah, it felt like it then, yeah.
Yeah, and then it's those moments where you can make these life-altering decisions, but it doesn't need to get to that, obviously. You can create that practice, I'm sure through meditation and stuff like that, of actually letting go and creating space and all of those things. Amazing story. I visualized you on that ground crawling.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. So now let's fast forward. So business is going. When did you eventually get out of UGG?
It was in late 95. What happened was that two things. One is that I love starting businesses. I love the thrill of entrepreneurialism. I love the unknown. I love the challenge. I love the risk. And that turns me on. And by this time we're doing 15 million. And to do that, you have to have a pretty decent overhead of accountants and, management. And I just started getting drawn into these meetings and conference calls, and everything was getting dumbed down to sort of fit everybody, and there was no risk taking, and I just felt that it wasn't fun for me anymore. And so I was ready for a change in that respect. The other part of it was that, at 15, we had like $15 million on order, so it looked like it could be a $20 million season. And once again, we'd sort of doubled, and getting the financing put in place to do the product was such a big issue every year. Even at this stage, the business plans I was writing, I was going out to banks, and after 15 years, they're going, oh, this is a fad, it'll never stick around. And I'd been hearing that for 10 years, and I couldn't convince these investors, whether they're investment bankers or especially banks. They were, well, it's too high, too much risk, too seasonal. What if it's a bad season? That I won't be around. So I knew that I was going to face that again this coming season. There was a buddy of mine who started a sandal company back when I was at the beach at Malibu in my van. He was a couple of vans up, in the next parking space, and he was selling these neoprene thongs, the sandals with the yellow, pink, and yellow triple deckers. And so he started a company called Deckers based on that little product. And eventually, in the 90s or late 80s, early 90s, the outdoor market took off, and he just licensed a brand called Teva sandals.
Yep.
With Teva, and he took his company public on the strength of that market shift. And I knew that he had millions of dollars in the bank. And the other thing is, I knew that his company died every winter, and our company died every summer. And we talked occasionally about getting together, but I used to joke, "Hey, Doug, you can't afford me," But this thing happened again. The universe just sort of kicked in. I was in the baggage claim at Atlanta Airport on my way to a super show, and Doug was going to exhibit at the super show for Teva. And I saw him at the other end of the terminal there, and I just got goosebumps because I knew, oh my God, it's perfect. And so I walked up to him and we high-fived, and I said, Doug, if ever we're going to do it, now's the time. And we had the accountants talking to each other that afternoon, and it resulted in, it was like me going public without having to go public, because the brand ended up in a public company. And the new company Deckers, they're the ones that have been responsible for taking it to the billions in sales, because they had the capital now to bring in as much product as they needed, and they were able to put into place really good marketing, really good product development decisions, and they also capitalized on the celebrity marketing that I'd started already, and they really took it up to the next level of the plateau. So
wow, amazing. So that was back in 95, you said?
Yeah, that was 95.
Wow, amazing. So you've been out basically for right around 20 years, let's say.
Close enough, yeah.
Gotcha. Now, obviously the brand has they've exploded. There's different shoes and there's everything. Do you look back and I wish I would have stayed longer, I got out too soon, I wish I could have gotten past the whole mundane business stuff and just stuck around? Where are you at with this whole thing now?
I was really happy. I sold out at exactly the right time for me. I've started many, many businesses since then, and some of them successful, most of them not, which is pretty average for an entrepreneur. I've really enjoyed life, but I look every time, I was just back in Boston. I spoke at Harvard last weekend, and I saw UGG boots everywhere, and I still get a kick out of every time I see a pair. I go, yeah, another. So it's a real thrill. I've never regretted selling, and I being a founder, you're always a founder. You can't get fired.
Yeah.
And because it's my baby, I even though it's off with another, parent now, I just still love the heck out of it.
That's so cool. Like, I couldn't even imagine walking down the street and being like, if it wasn't for me, none of you would be wearing these right now. That's gonna be so cool. By the way, how did you come up with the name? Is there some significance to UGG?
It's a name that, in Australia, several people sort of think they invented it, but nobody really knows. And a guy down there registered a trademark UGH. But when I came to America and I realized there was no product in America, I just went, oh my God, and the law here is that, if you can establish first use and continual use, then you have the trademark rights. So I registered UGG and just started business and never stopped. So but the answer is nobody really knows who the originator of that word was.
But now it's plastered on millions and millions and millions of shoes around the world.
Yeah.
Incredible. Now, you just said something really interesting, which is you've started businesses since, and I think this is really important for people to understand. And even though UGG was, in all respects, even when you owned it, a very massively successful company, and yet, even with the framework that you designed in the book, et cetera, you still create businesses that fail or aren't, quote unquote, as successful as you probably envisioned. And I think that's really important for people to understand because, I think the process is always the same, right? Like the framework that you laid out, which I really appreciate, is every business goes through the same process. Every business owner has to go through the same process. And even though you have that knowledge, when you create something new, it still happens again. It's like the first time, right?
Yeah, the way I like to think of it is that all business is the same.
Yeah.
Right. There's like what I think of as a freeway, and that's the business process, right? And it doesn't matter what the product is or the service is, or you could be even starting a church, and you've got to get a congregation, right? The freeway's there. Everybody's in business already. You got to figure out how do you get onto the freeway. So you have the idea, you're stuck out in the surface streets, right? 5 suburbs away. And you got to figure out how to get from suburb to suburb to suburb to find the on-ramp. And each one of these is a little obstacle. There's a stop sign, there's a roadblock, there's a traffic jam, and by the time you figure out all of the little details of your business, you're getting closer and closer to the on-ramp. And then eventually, you'll just have the right product, the right price, the right customer, the right delivery system, the right everything. And that can be for a new app or it could be for a new product, right?
Yep.
You'll get everything right and suddenly you get sucked into this freeway and off the business goes. And that's the best way I can, put it. You've got to be able to last out long enough to figure out where the ramp is to get on board.
Yeah. I'll add to your stop signs and traffic jams, flat tires, engines will blow up. You'll have to use 4 different cars to get there. Your driver will die. There's a lot of things that happen. So yeah, I think that's a really good analogy. I'm actually going to steal that one. There's a great line someone told me: steal smart, right? You use what other people do and do better. So I really like that. What are you up to today?
I am finishing up this podcast. I'm going to send a blast out to my database to let them know that the book is coming out on December the 2nd. That's next Tuesday.
Nice.
That's on Amazon, and it's called The Birth of a Brand. It's exercising your entrepreneurial passion and soul. So there's a lot of spirituality, a lot of philosophy in this book. It's not just In fact, it's almost know how to be a better leader or how to get a better bottom line. It's not about that at all. It's all about the boots on the ground stuff that you don't learn in school and you don't learn it from books. So that's, all my friends say that it's a page turner. So I'm really stoked to see that coming out. So if you want to go to the website, www.briansmithspeaker.com, and it's BRIAN, briansmithspeaker.com. You can download a free chapter if you want to get a preview. But otherwise, December the 2nd, next Tuesday on Amazon is the big launch. So
awesome. Yeah. I'll tell you guys the first, and I didn't want to kind of ruin it for you guys, but the first story, like how you open the book, you're going to want to keep reading, put it that way. And by the way, you just said boots on the ground, and I was like, oh, that's an interesting pun.
Yeah. In fact, another thing I've done, I pulled out 51 business lessons out of the book, and I've done the first 6 2-minute videos called Brian's Boots on the Ground Business Tips, and I'm putting one on YouTube every week, so that'll go throughout the whole year. And you can also download those from briansmithspeaker.com.
Awesome. And guys, for those that are listening in your car or whatever, you can always come to satoriprime.com/podcasts with an S and just find this episode. There's a resource guide. We'll put all the links, the quotes, how to find the book on Amazon, all of that kind of stuff. So Brian, as we wrap this up, I always ask my guests this question. I mean, we kind of spoke a lot about this, so I don't know if you're going to have a different answer, but I'll ask you anyway. There's that cliche where we always say, I wish I knew then what I know now. And you've obviously had tremendous life experiences. Is there something you wish you knew, 15, 20, 30 years ago that you know now?
Oh boy, what a question. As regards the whole UGG boot business, I wish I had found somebody that could have helped me with finance. Because even though I was an accountant, I didn't get money. I didn't get finance. And somebody that could have showed me what problems were ahead with the seasonality and the cash flow, that would have been brilliant. And I wish I knew that from the business standpoint. But in life, there's nothing I would have changed because, I just love the ignorance that I've come to think that's one of my greatest blessings also, the ignorance to keep launching these new ideas. It makes me alive. And, I just, if we can, you and I can just convince one more entrepreneur to get going, then, I'll leave this planet a happy guy,
That's our mission. I mean, like our entire Satori Prime mission is just that. I just think in today's world, we all have a passion, something that I think we're destined to do.
Yep.
If I can teach people some tools and some mindset things to let them, I know you're never going to feel comfortable jumping off a cliff and figuring out how to fly on the way down. But that as entrepreneurs, that's what we need to do. So if I can at least give you the confidence to take that leap, I know the world will be a better place when you, whoever's listening, get to shine your light out onto the world. And, that's our entire mission, is to wake people up and push them past what they believe is possible in this world. And I think you're a perfect this story is just such an embodiment of what it takes to do that. And the beauty is, like we said in the beginning, right? If you saw the list of all the things you went through, no, you wouldn't have even signed up for it, knowing where it led.
No way.
And yet here you are saying, I have no regrets and I would have done it all again.
I'd still do it. I'm still doing it all again. I haven't even got close to finishing.
I love that. The only thing I want to just kind of paraphrase to make it more global, you were saying that, you would have found a finance guy. I think what that kind of boils down to, if we could say, it's like in business, there's things that you're going to be really great at.
Yeah.
And there's things that you're not going to be really great at. I think if you have what's the word I'm looking for? If you have maybe vision or insight to kind of be subjective about what your strengths and weaknesses are, and then find people to do what you're weak at instead of you trying to do everything. Because I think like a lot of people do this one trick pony thing.
Yeah.
I think that's a really powerful lesson.
Yeah, that's the most critical thing is all entrepreneurs have to at some point let go of certain things. And the ones who don't let go will implode the business. And the ones who do figure out how to bring in the help and let other people do better things, that's the one. They're the ones that go on to bigger success.
Yeah. And again, it goes back to that same, I think like being egoless is really, really paramount in business. And also, we didn't really talk about this, but did you notice that kind of the vision that you had for UGG when you first started changed and morphed like a million times on your way to where you got to?
Over and over and over. I mean, I never thought when I first had the idea of sheepskin birds, the last place I would have thought of was surf shops. You know, that just sort of was a matter of deduction, like Sherlock Holmes. And then where to then? You know, ski and snowboarding, you know, okay, that's a crossover. And then, but no one in Minneapolis has read Surfer magazine. So what do they do in Minneapolis? And I figured out it was skating. You know, the kids skate in rinks and their moms go to watch in these 40-degree rinks. And so everything was like a stepping stone to the next thing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I said to someone the other day, like, if you told me 3.5, 4 years ago that I would be one of the top Facebook marketing experts in the world and people would come to us for all this, I'd be like, you gotta be kidding me. Because I didn't even know, other than email, I didn't know anything about a computer. And, you know, our whole mission was just to like empower people and, you know, break down the walls to what they believed is possible. It's funny that that's become the medium today. And I think as an entrepreneur, you have to be malleable and always look for the opportunities. So again, Brian, just amazing, absolutely amazing story. Keep doing what you're doing. Thank you for doing what you did do, because my feet thank you every single day. I literally walk in these every single day. And just thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom. And for everyone out there, you know, definitely, absolutely pick up this book. If nothing else, I think the stories are going to make you keep flipping the pages, but Brian's life lessons and the way he shares them are going to be absolutely life altering if you're running your own business or thinking of running your own business. So Brian, truly, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ilan. That's my mission, is to help people change and figure it out.
Absolutely. And I don't believe in accidents. So I believe that is why you are with us here today.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
All right, my friend. Thank you again so much. And again, for everyone listening, make sure to go to satoriprime.com/podcast. Look for the Brian Smith episode. Get the resources, all the links, and every which way that you can connect with him and get his book will be there. And that's always speak again. Have an amazing, amazing day, everyone.
Thank you for joining us on this week's Performance Enhancing Podcast. We've taken this pep talk and created a custom action guide so you know exactly what action steps to take now to grow your business. Just head over to satoriprime.com/podcast and download it for free. Also, please leave a comment and rate this podcast on iTunes. It'll help us get the word out. Thanks for listening. Now, go and implement. We'll see you next time.
Did you run through doors?